Welcome. This is episode 5, People Over Politics. I'm the host, Martin Mitchell, and I'm joined by a special guest today, joining us all the way from Baltimore County. She is a very special individual. She's an advocate, an activist, and now she's signed up to run as a public servant. So get to meet her. So Corey, thanks for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Martin. I'm so excited to be here.
Yes. Yeah. So, of course, tell us a little bit about you. Of course, for some people who don't know you, I know you from like a policy aspect, and I think that you do amazing policy work, and you're one of the young Black leaders out here.
Don't make me tear up.
Yeah. No, for sure. Just speaking highly.
Okay. So my name is Corey Johnson. I am an attorney, Baltimore. I would say born, but I'm an Army brat, which most people don't know. So I was born in Germany, but I've lived here my whole life. I went to Towson for undergrad. A lot of people don't know this. I was the first Black woman to ever win a national debate championship. So I feel like advocacy is in my blood, You said what, Martin?
No, I said always overachieving. Always overachieving.
I went to law school at Howard, and now I'm doing policy work, which I really, really enjoy. Economic mobility work, which I love. So, yes. Yeah.
Well, of course, always making history, and I think I read somewhere, when successful, you'll be the youngest in the state. So, I did, did read that, making history in many ways. Of course, as the debate champion. Earlier on, and soon to be, this is Women's History Month, soon to be the youngest Black woman elected to the State House. So that's major as well. And of course, I think one of the things that I saw is you're very big on social work, but I think a lot of the conversations that we've had are around like how Maryland could do better in the future of cannabis.
Yes.
No, exactly. So
actually, and I'll say this, it's weird because when I joined my doctoral program, so I'm in my last year of coursework at Morgan State in social work, and I'm not a social work practitioner. Like I am not a licensed social worker, but I am very, very deep into social welfare policy and how we solve micro issues on a macro level, because usually those issues are, indicative of like some social institutional issue. And so I'm excited. I want to talk about cannabis. Me and you have been having conversation, text messaging wars about legalization of marijuana.
I got to get you in person or actually virtual, because sometimes it falls between the cracks.
Right.
Right. So yes, right. No. So what is like how do you see what is your vision on how the Maryland medical program went, and what's going on in the General Assembly right now? Of course, there's a lot of different bills, about the future of Maryland cannabis. One being a referendum,
right?
Different reform and framework bills,
right?
So what bill do you see is most important? And, what do you want to see maybe that isn't in a bill? Because, long before these bills came, one of the things that I said is I wanted to see, people get freedom,
right.
Not only incarcerated people, but people get freedom on paper, who have passed cannabis related convictions. I think that's kind of that should be at the foremost. Like we shouldn't have legalization, without criminal justice reform, and that has to be the conversation. But I'm sure you got a lot to share. So
I think that first and foremost, in regards to just legalization, period, I think that from my perspective, legalization is going to happen, right? Because corporations want that. So legalization is going to happen for cannabis, right? I think the question is, what does that legalization look like? And who wins and who loses in the larger scheme of things? And we're sitting for me at least, like, and I guess this is like more from like the social welfare policy analysis. It's like there was a war on drugs that happened, right? And there are certain folks that got criminalized as a result of that, right? So Black people, and I don't know the exact percentage, but is it that we're 3.5 times more likely to get arrested for marijuana or, you know, drugs than white people in the state of Maryland? Or is that national? Do you know if that's national or if that's Maryland?
I'm not certain. So that's a good question to look up, but I do know it's like in between that 3 or 4 times. So yeah.
Three to four times. And it's like, okay, fair enough. You know, America profits off the criminalization of Black folk, right? And even if we were to say, you know, we have a policy that may be retroactive in clearing people, when people leave, what type of economic parity do they have, right? Like, especially like these young entrepreneurs. I think that if we're going to have a conversation about legalization, we have to have a conversation about what it looks like for Black people to be a part of the market. And if the conversation doesn't start there, then it's going to look like everything else that Black people have been framed out of in terms of economic mobility. And literally, I mean, from my perspective, I think that 95% of the issues in Maryland for Black folk is economic mobility. And so I think that if we get framed out of cannabis, I mean, I told you, I think that it's going to look like, I mean, I'm definitely pro legalization, but I think that what it will end up looking like is us, you know, buying weed at Walmart. That's my, I don't know how you feel about that, but I feel like that's like the perfection of capitalism, right? Like, or am I tripping? Or am I tripping?
I mean, of course, I think that's very far down the line. But my hope is that you have a market in which you have, of course, you know, big business, but you also have some small family-owned boutique, cannabis industry businesses as well. So, my hope isn't that it gets so big market and big brand name where, there's no more, small companies or businesses. So, I mean,
I guess it's like, what does regulation look like, right? Because like, it's like, okay, what does regulation look like? And what does the law, how do you get your license to sell marijuana? What does that look like? How many Black people have convictions, right? Like, if we're looking at the criminal justice system, even if it's like, okay, fine, all the marijuana convictions go away, right? Maryland is still only 30% Black, and we still make up 70% of the prison population, right? Those folks that are getting out of prison, 9 times out of 10, their conviction is not just for, oh, I just had weed, right? I might have also a gun offense that goes along with the weed. You get what I'm saying? Like, it's not, I think that it's not linear. And so I think in that way, it's just like, okay, regulation wise, I hope that Black people don't get framed out as we often do by social welfare policy and you know what I mean? Like, I think that that's my biggest thing, is making sure that we don't get framed out, and making sure that regulations, once marijuana has been legalized, that we don't make it to where it's those small Black entrepreneurs, we're not criminalizing them or saying that they can't get the license, because then the Black market is still going to exist.
Yeah, and of course, when you say like criminalizing as far as like barriers to get the license, as far as like past, absolutely, and I think that one of the biggest things to keep in mind is that the barriers to entry, and at least the way that I see it, is one of the biggest barriers to entry, is the capital to start these businesses. Especially if it is like a process, cultivation, dispensary, all of those are far more expensive licenses than the ancillary licenses, like, your deliveries,
right.
and so on and so forth, like, your testing companies. But the thought is like, the capital, getting the startup capital is, difficult. And when I think of these small companies, and I think of like how they can have micro licenses, and how home growth is important, because home growth will lend way for these micro licenses and these small business owners to invest their capital into the industry, but also not need $250,000 to get an initial license, and then $1 million to get it off of the ground, because of course once you get your location, you have to make sure your location is up to code, and up to standard, and of course that generally takes several $1,000s worth of renovations.
Yeah.
And of course, there's actual putting the product on the shelf.
Yeah.
So there's of course a lot of different things, and I think that people who want to be involved in the market, have to start thinking about it now.
Yeah.
Because of course, like when these licenses become available, a lot of people would have already done the legwork, and
Right.
depending on how the framework looks, a lot of those big brand medical companies would have first crack. So depending on how the framework looks, because I know that there's some amendments in there or some provisions that say that there should be a waiting period for prior medical people to get licenses in the market. So essentially, they wouldn't dominate the market because they already have the infrastructure set up.
Right.
So yeah, I mean that's part of the conversation.
I think that for me, yeah, I think that, and that's kind of the weird place. I think it was Jill's bill that was that is a lot. I like the reparations conversation. Like, let's have the conversation about making sure if we're serious, if we're really serious about, hey, there are all these collateral consequences that have come as a result of locking people up for these marijuana charges or whatever, then I think that the reparations conversation is important as well. And maybe, using the tax that, because I mean, that's what happened. We literally criminalized Black people for years and then was like, oh, you got to be forward thinking. And it's like, well, I've been in jail or I've been in prison for however X many amount of years. And now I'm out, and now I don't have any access to capital or resources that would even allow me to like break into the market in the first place. So I think that for me, I like
that tax revenue part. Of course, I like that tax revenue part. And I was at the hearing yesterday. I testified, or not yesterday, but I guess a couple of days ago.
2 days ago, yeah.
But I was basically hearing some of the testimony, and some of the testimony around that was like, would giving certain preferences throw off, I guess, the existing framework of the medical market, which is.
Explain that to me. I might have missed that. Explain that to me.
Well, but basically the way it is set up is like 2 dispensaries per congressional district.
Right.
So the way that the current dispensaries, and I think the medical association argued, was that legislation like this would quadruple the amount of dispensaries in certain areas.
Right.
Of course, this is all speculation, because as we write legislation, a lot of times we don't know exactly what's going to come, and a lot of times there's unintended consequences that come with these legislations. There's a lot of nuances to being involved in that. But the one thing that to keep in mind is that I believe that it's important for the money to go back to the most like local vehicle, like, or through the most local vehicle, which is like to the local government, municipality, the county. And it's still some oversight from the state. Like they have to do annual reporting to the state per the legislation. And I think that's important, because the thought is like, if we have to come to the state every year and they have to argue about how the money's being dispersed, and it's just going to be very bureaucratic, in my opinion.
Yeah. Sorry if you hear this. Sorry, I live in Baltimore, so sorry if you hear commotion in the background.
Hey, well, what, my other guest later, she's from Baltimore as well, so, or at least she's living in that area.
We'd love to see it.
Yes, exactly. But of course, one of the things that I wanted to ask you was, I see that of course you're a big fitness advocate, right? Or a fitness enthusiast, right? So tell me about your fitness journey, and how that has been.
Don't be catching me off guard with these.
I got you.
I'm just saying. So what's crazy is maybe about 4 years ago, I actually weighed like 320 pounds. People be like, no way. I'm like, yes, I did. I was cute though. I was cute. Okay, fat phobia is real. People try to play. I was fly. Okay, for all the people out there. No, but so what happened was, so I have juvenile myoclonic epilepsy. And my condition worsened, and I had a grand mal, and my doctor was just like, you know, this could be a contributing factor to, you know, not being healthy, not eating the right way, kind of not sleeping, not living a healthy lifestyle. And, you know, I can get into all the social determinants of health and all of that stuff, you know what I mean? But long story short, I was just like, you know, it's time to make a change. I really got to address this because I'm trying to live a long, healthy, prosperous life. And so, 4 years ago, I started working out. I started running a little bit. Then I started running a lot of it, and I got really into it. I mean, I didn't gain a little weight since then. I actually had a seizure recently, maybe 30 days ago, right before I filed, actually. It kind of threw a lot of stuff off, my grand mal, but so that was kind of my biggest motivating factor. And fitness was, you know, trying to overcome the health condition that I have. And a lot of Black women have epilepsy and don't know that they have epilepsy, you know? And so, they call it the disease of kings is what they call it. I think Napoleon had epilepsy. I don't know. Now I'm just speculating, but they call it the disease of kings. So.
No, I mean, it's great to know the story behind this. Cause I mean, to be honest with you, you know, I didn't know your story. I just saw you, you know, probably midway in your fitness journey. And, you know, now, of course, I see you doing boss things, and it looks like you're a brand ambassador or some type of fitness model.
Go season. Black-owned brands. Black-owned brands.
Okay, yes. But, you know, I've definitely seen that. So I thought to bring it up. And I think I first became aware of you JOTF times. So that's how we first became aware. And that's what, long behind you. You've been gone for 2 years at least now, or something.
Yeah, it's been about a year. I left JOTF maybe it's been a year and a half. So a year and a half. Last
and for people who don't know JOTF, I gotta explain it. Job Opportunities Task Force. Right?
Yeah. So I left there. Now I'm at the Council for State Governments Justice Center, working in the corrections division on the economic mobility team. So we do more national stuff. So I was working on a bill in Maryland with Senator McCray. Got pulled off of that because now it's a conflict of interest because I'm running. So, you know, that's a thing. But working on some legislation in other states regarding occupational licensure. So for individuals with criminal records.
Sure. I mean, I love that. And I mean, you're staying in the same line of work because I think, you know, JOTF, there's a lot of great work they've done in the past with the ban the box. And of course now, you know, I think they're still dealing with that woman's pre-release. So that is important for a lot of people who don't know. Is I think it's that there isn't
there are zero for women and 9 for men, and one is you know, women and men can go to, but it's not 1 for women, so, and 9 for men. So definitely a gender equity issue. Yeah, I
mean, as soon as I heard it, you know, the numbers I was like, wait, there's 0, you know, pre-release centers for women to help. Of course, women inmates or returning citizens get back on their feet. Because of course, you know, that is the difficult part, reentry. And as we know, you know, this system is designed for you to fail. So, you know, having these tools at your disposal, you know, is important.
Yeah, it's right. It's literally, and I think that this is where it's certain institutions are created in a way to be anti-Black or to be, you know, or to facilitate misogynoir, right? Because it's how do you not have a women's pre-release center and you have 9 for men in the state of Maryland? You know, I that's something still to this day. It's it doesn't make sense, but it does make sense if you think about the way that anti-Blackness operates within the state, you know? So don't get me on my soapbox, Martin. Don't get me on my soapbox.
Well, I mean, I think one of the things we have to understand is we do have the largest legislative Black caucus, right? You know, in the nation, but we still live in a conservative state. You know, I like to tell people that Maryland is fake progressive. And the reason I say fake progressive, and of course that is used maliciously, but I would say we're still conservative, right? We're the most northern southern state, and I'm reminded of it, a lot. The thought is like, yes, we have a Republican governor, but we have for a long time had Democratic leadership,
Right.
at the state house,
Right.
and I'd even go to say that, like, I think that, like, the Democratic legislature is more progressive when there is a Republican at the
Right.
government in
Yeah.
the governor's seat,
Yeah.
because they have to be to the left of the governor,
Yeah.
so that's Maryland for you. That's Maryland for you. But I'm grateful for leaders coming up like you, who are gonna shape things differently in Maryland.
Like us, Martin, like
Yeah,
us, like
right, right,
us.
right. You're right. I'm doing a few things. But I like to be humble. But of course, yes, I'm also doing the work, and I have great allies and colleagues like yourself to do the work with.
Yeah.
And one of the things that drives me crazy, right? You're from Baltimore County.
Right.
Um, this state's attorney's race, right? Scott Schellenberger. I'm gonna just go on record and say Scott Schellenberger, he is a piece of right. So, and the reason I say this is because we did a forum, the Young Dems, with Scott Schellenberger,
Right.
Aisha Brave Boy,
Right.
and I forget the state's attorney. It was Gibson from Howard County,
Right.
and I could pull the video. There was a bunch of Young Dems on there, and Scott Schellenberger, for one, his tactics in there were fear mongering, right? So a lot of times when he talked about like crimes, he talked about the worst of the crimes, right? Because a lot of our conversation was, as a state's attorney, it is within your power to deprioritize certain.
Yeah. Prosecutorial discretion. Absolutely.
Prosecutory, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So we're saying that, especially in terms of juveniles, there's certain charges that you could not agree to charge juveniles with, as adults, and he wasn't willing to hear that because he would just come back with the 10, 15 years, 17 years ago. Here's the worst story that I've ever had, and I'm gonna tell it to you. And when I tell other people, they're like, "Well, that's the story he always did. That's one of his stories."
Yeah.
Yeah, he got
But
on
that's
that.
I mean, that's the lot, and this isn't like a shot, but like that's the logic of like white supremacy, right? Like it's like I mean, if I'm being real, and I hear conversations like that, not even just from him, but I hear those types of conversations when we talk about making sure that people have access to fair chance licensing. Right? Like, what if the guy that was convicted of yada, yada, yada a long time ago comes in to fix my HVAC and rapes my wife? And it's just like, where are you getting this from? I think it's the logic. I mean, it's negrophobia is what,
Yes.
I mean, it's negrophobia. It's the fear of blackness. When you think about like criminals, it's like the reality is when you think of criminals, when you think of young criminals, you think black children. You think black children, you know what I'm saying? And I'm going to tell you the worst horrific story that paints that picture, and I'm going to sell it to you. And that's how people get buy-in. That's how people get buy-in to like criminalize young black children. It's like, let me tell you the worst of the worst. It's fear. You are absolutely correct. Correct, 110%.
But to go further on that conversation, just to tell you about your state's attorney, because I think he'll get reelected. Even though I somewhat like Robbie. I think Scott is going to get reelected. But the real problem I had with Scott was I said I don't believe in juvenile life, because we had a great series of questions, and I said I don't believe in juvenile life, and one, I don't believe that the juvenile's brain is fully developed, yada yada, and I believe that they should have a chance of redemption, yada yada, and basically he told the terrible story, and then we kind of went back and forth, and then my question was, or statement was, I don't believe that juveniles, are irredeemable. And he said that some are irredeemable. And the fact that like he believes that some juveniles are irredeemable, and that, that life is appropriate in some of those situations. So we agreed to disagree and kept it moving.
It's definitely scary. I will say, as a black attorney that was trained at Howard Law, I think that people's just juridical paradigm are just completely different. Like even like engaging with some Black attorneys that have way different cultural experiences than me.
Sure.
So I feel like some of them would be on that same page. And I think it just goes to that's you, bruh. That's you. You know what I mean? Like the conversations that people have about, the paradigm that I have in regards to jurisprudence is so fundamentally different, because at Howard, they teach us like social engineering, right? Like either you're a parasite to society or you're a social engineer. There's no in between. There's no middle ground. It's either, you're working the system, or the system is working you. And so I think that some people's approach is not that. It's like very black and white, and no middle ground. I think it's absolutely ridiculous.
Plus, I'm sorry to just stick on your state's attorney, but plus he's the number one witness for, like criminal justice reform on the like opposition side. It's just like, sheesh. You know what I mean? Like I to be honest with you, I'm surprised how many hearings I've heard him in, oppose criminal justice reform. And I'm like, wow, you can never call yourself progressive or for the people, at least in my regards, because he's their go-to dim witness.
But I think that it's crazy, just because it's like, as a prosecutor, your job is not to convict, right? Like that's not your job. Your job is not to convict, right? Like that's like a common misconception. That is not a thing. I used to work for the Department of Justice, right? It's like, no, your job is to seek justice first, right? Like that which is right, not necessarily like the conviction. It's justice. And so I think, it's definitely, it's weird is all I can, it's weird. Very, very weird. People's paradigms.
No, that's deep. That's deep. So I'll leave him alone. But at least my feelings on that. And I think that that's a message that can resonate with a lot of individuals. The fact that like, one, prosecutorial discretion is a thing, and you can use it, and I think you could still.
And it goes more so for the head of the agent. It goes more so for the head of the agency than what it does the actual prosecutors, right? Because you have like the state's attorney, and then you have the assistant state's attorneys. Then they're like under the guidance of the state's attorney. And so I have had friends who have, I don't feel like we should. I think that this is not a thing. We should not push the envelope on this. And it's like, no, we need the conviction. So get the conviction. There's different levels. Every prosecutor that doesn't have prosecutorial discretion. The state's attorney would set that for the assistant state's attorneys.
Absolutely. Well, of course, there's a bureaucracy and everything, and thanks for laying that out.
Yeah.
And so I got 3 questions for you.
Not 3. Did you say 3 questions?
Questions for you, but they're more rapid questions.
Okay.
So the first one is Pepsi or Coke?
Neither. On this journey. You've been small. Have you been small all your life, Martin? Have you been small your whole life? Because I feel like.
Yes, but no. What it says, right? So like I like to say that like I'm like average, right? I'm average now, but at the end of the day, when I was younger, I was definitely small. Like I was a runt, for sure. I think I came into high school like 4'10". You know what I mean? Probably like 4'10".
Okay.
80 pounds. Like I was super small. Yes.
Okay, that wasn't me. So I have to be careful. So I say neither. Sorry if you heard that. Y'all all right?
Wow.
But yeah, my sister and my niece are upstairs.
Neither. You're drinking the water. We appreciate the agua.
Drinking the water.
Exactly. H2O keeps you alive. The next one is, it's Women's History Month. Who's your favorite woman icon? Who are you looking up to? You only pick one person.
I don't want to be cliche, but I always start with my mama. My mom was my introduction to Black womanhood. My mom is the strongest person. I will get on my soapbox about my mom. Like she is legendary.
You, me, and Kanye.
She is legend. She is legendary to me. You know what I'm saying? My mom taught me at a very young age that we don't know fear. And even when you're afraid, you still do what you got to do, you know, because the fear is going to be there regardless, you know, and that has been something that has pushed me, you know, far beyond I've been afraid of a lot of things. Shit, I'm afraid. Can I say I'm sorry. Shoot.
You're all good.
Cut that out. But you know, there's been a lot of things that I feared that I feel like my mom has pushed me forward, even in my times of uncertainty. So my mama. I got a lot of them, but my mama.
No, I got you. If there was one place you could visit, where would it be?
I would go back to Ghana. I had a really great time in Ghana. When did I go? I went in 2016. One of the best experiences that I ever had. We went to the, you know, like Cape Coast. We went to the castles, had a whole spiritual awakening. Ghana for sure.
Understood. Well, I gotta make it out to Ghana. And of course, you know, I appreciate you for taking the time to talk to me on POP, People Over Politics. Yes. And you know, we wish you the best of luck. Of course, I'll be out there on the trail with you sometimes. Yes.
Come knock these doors with me.
Yes, exactly. The Wakanda X, absolutely. And we're gonna continue to talk cannabis, continue to talk you know, social equity, social welfare, as you said. And you know, I will use you as one of my foremost experts in the, you know, those fields if I ever need to bounce any ideas off of you.
Not an expert. Well, thank you. You better give me come on. I receive it, Martin.
I got you. I appreciate you. You know, thanks for coming out again.
Bye, Martin.
Yes. See you in June. No, I'm just kidding. I'll be out there before that. Hey, so that was Corey. Of course, Corey is great. And now we have another guest. So another guest, she is coming from the Baltimore area, Baltimore region area. I think you got to unmute yourself. You still might be muted, but you know, definitely a dear friend. If anybody doesn't know, one of the words that I will use in relation to Keisha is community, because you know, when I see Keisha, I always think of community, always giving good community vibes. And you know, if you don't know, she's also a trailblazer, you know, in the cannabis industry. Of course, it's a small, I'd say it's a small circle once you get involved, and it's even smaller amongst the people of color. So you know, definitely was glad to meet Keisha. You know, long ago now. It feels like we've been friends forever. But you know, Keisha, of course, tell us about yourself. Tell us about your org. I see Explore Maryland Cannabis.
Yeah. Well, Martin, thank you so much. Like you mentioned, I feel like we've known each other for a very long time, but when you are actually doing the work, you know, time just kind of flies. It just kind of flies. Yeah. I'm Keisha. I'm the CEO of Explore Maryland Cannabis. I've been on a ton of virtual things, so that's probably why my title is still the same, but I wear multiple hats in the cannabis industry. But today, you know, I'm here to talk about Explore Maryland Cannabis. We're a community membership and outreach organization based here in Maryland. Our goal is to build a connected and informed cannabis community, and we do that through our membership program. We do that through our community activities, events, and some other things. Our strategic partnerships with, you know, our legislators, you know, our movers and shakers, our influencers, our leaders. So we are just building the community and making sure that folks understand that there's a place for them here.
Okay. I mean, absolutely. You know, I try to keep up with everything that you're doing, but of course, you know, I'm always doing a lot myself. So I do want to be able to tune in more. And I know, you know, one of the things we talked about is in 2022, you know, you will present me opportunities to make sure I tune in more and get involved. Yeah. Yes. But of course, you know, one of the things that we always talk about, I know I've been on your show, so this is a little different to have you on the podcast that I host this time around. Right? You know, you're the guest. You're the guest now. But of course, we always talk about legislation. We love to talk about the policy because, you know, one of the things that I always say is, you know, I realized early on that, you know, you can change lives through policy and with policy. So what are some bills that you were really keyed in on this session? You know, what are your favorites? What are not your favorites? And, you know, especially in relation to cannabis.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, as you know, it's been a busy legislative session for cannabis. Bills are just flying everywhere. It's super
Sure.
hard to keep up with what's going on, which is why I love staying tapped in with people like you, staying tapped in with other community organizations, Maryland Normal, Leaders of a Beautiful Struggle, people who are actually in the community, kind of keeping tabs on the bills. You know, my friends at the Outlaw Report, they publish weekly on what's happening in legislative session, but I first and foremost I'm in support of protections for patients. I love the idea of a robust home cultivation or a home grow aspect in the bill. And also, you know, there has to be some type of uh, placement or something that is carved out for people who have been harmed by the war on drugs so that they have a place, whether it be a license that they can afford at a very equitable price, right? Or it is education and training where they are able to navigate through the system based on the information that they've already gathered, and they're able to place that in maybe a C-suite or an executive level job. Because to be quite honest, you know, the majority of the jobs in the cannabis industry are very either patient or customer facing. So while, you know, Black and brown folk who have been harmed by the war on drugs know absolutely things that, you know, those folks are doing on the front lines, in order to get ownership, in order to, you know, grow and have generational wealth, to be able to use the intel that you already have, it has to go beyond our frontline positions, right? And that's no disrespect to those, because those are great ways to get into the industry, but it has to go beyond that.
Mm. I mean, and that's key. I mean, I think you brought up a few things. So the first thing I talk about is the home growth, right? So there's a few different bills which include home growth. I think that the smallest one that I had seen that includes it is two, and then I think that if I recall, yeah, two is of course not a lot from a a personal use standpoint. And one of the things when I talk about home growth is I also want to talk about cottage businesses, micro licenses, because I think that that's important because everyone doesn't have the capital to have a standalone dispensary or cultivation operation or processing operation. Of course, ancillary licenses are cheaper, but these micro licenses would allow people, small business owners, to home grow, get their products tested, and then the thought is it's like, maybe somewhere down the line they could then actually get a physical space, but it at least allows them to gain pathways into the industry, and as being a legal business owner. Because the thought is even if you gave preference to a lot of, and it's one of the things that happens in these other states, even if you give preference to Black and brown, individuals, if the capital and the know-how to move through the bureaucracy of getting yourself from A to C, is not really laid out, it's still going to be difficult for some of these individuals to obtain their license and do everything above ground. To get it from that license to operations, because of course there's a lot that can happen and go wrong between just obtaining a license to actually operating and opening.
Yeah, and even when you think about grow space, right? The other business that I own with my partner is called Madam Green Grow. So we teach women of color the power that comes from home cultivation, cultivating your own garden, specifically cannabis, right? So that's the business that actually got me into the cannabis industry, because I found the power of the plant, right? So when you talk about cottage-based businesses, I've been to tons of grows, huge grows and very small grows. And one thing that I know is not everyone wants to have hundreds of thousands of square feet to be able to grow in, right? Sometimes, running something very small that could, sustain maybe a farmer's market style of traffic to your business, like that, there's no need for you to have such a huge footprint, right? And that's where I think cottage style grows come in. That's where I think co-ops really come in, because there's a place for everyone in the ecosystem, right? There's a Walmart, there's a Target, there's a CVS, there's a Rite Aid, right? There's space for everyone. And then there's also Brown's Market right in Prince George's County that also, does some of the same things that some of our bigger, maybe medicinal pharmacy-led companies do. But just think of the power and the impact that that could give a business owner, even a Black and brown business owner, that has, you know, either shelf space in one of our larger dispensaries through their cottage grow, their co-op that they're growing, or they're, you know, doing the things that we do as far as delivery. I mean, the options are endless. The options are endless. I could talk about co-ops and collectives all day.
No, I mean, hey, I love the idea, and I'm not sure the place in Prince George's County that you mentioned, but you know, I'm not familiar with that place. What is the name of it?
Browns Market. So I graduated from Largo Senior High School. So in that area of Forestville, District Heights, there is a small Black-owned market that's been there for so long, right off of Silver Hill Road. And maybe, so we got Marlboro Pike, Silver Hill Road, Pennsylvania Avenue. So it's right there in that shopping center if you're familiar with it. But that's where I learned, you know, that's where you go and buy your herbs, your ashwagandha, even your like raw honey. Those things weren't readily available in the grocery stores where I grew up, right? So you had to go to those specialty stores. Whole Foods and those stores weren't around. So you had to find those little mom and pop shops. Traditionally, they're, you know, Asian markets where they have the herbs and the big shelves of supplements. But Brown's Market is family owned. It's been right there in Prince George's County. And my mom still goes there all the time to tell me the things that she buys.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I know that, of course, you mentioned home growth earlier, and one of the key differences that I wanted to talk about was I'm really stoked that you know, Gabriel Acevedo has a bill.
Yes.
Right. So his bill is 1342, and you know, Gabriel Acevedo, I'll say, one, he's a, you know, a friend of mine, but he's a, you know, a true friend of the people, and you know, he's always been a staunch advocate on making sure that when legalization happens, you know, we legalize in a way that's, you know, equitable, you know, and fair and reparative to the Black and brown community, which is important because, you know, we know that a good percentage of a majority of Marylanders being polled, you know, want legalization for responsible adult use to happen, you know, and then from that poll, we also know that, you know, more people would be in favor of it when you have things like automatic expungements, removing paraphernalia, the codifying the Court of Special Appeals decision and expanding that not only from the vehicle, not only from the individual, but to the vehicle, because, you know, as I said in the hearing, you know, we know that law enforcement will use that vehicle as a tool because, you know, at the end of the day, if we, you know, allow this to continue being the tool, you know, we can't fault them for using their tools that, you know, are at their disposal. So, you know, it's within our right to, of course, you know, take this away. And, you know, I think it's important to drive the conversation around that. And, you know, I think we can't pass legalization without home growth. I think we can't pass legalization without criminal justice reform. You know, even though, you know, I would love to be able to consume, you know, openly, you know, one, I'm already a medical patient, but, you know, openly and freely and cancel the stigma. But I also want to make sure that we repair, you know, the damage. We bring brothers and sisters home.
Yes.
We give people freedom on paper. You know, like Jill said, the vacation of these charges, no expungements, a vacation like it never happened. And, you know, so all these things, you know, need to happen and be at the forefront. And I think the decrim, you know, needs to be way higher. We have the lowest decrim level because we also know that, like, for me, I have an issue when the loudest voices in the room are white folks. When, like, hey, at the end of the day, somebody asked me the other day, what did my Black friend mean to me when he said, like, you could be an ally or you could be an ally, but like basically play your position. And that's what he said. So he didn't really understand what that meant. Right. So I broke it down to him, you know, as a group of white folks. And I said, well, here's what he's saying. Right. The thought is like on Black issues, we would love for you to be understanding, you know, and be an ally and be supportive. But we essentially don't want you to lead the movement, nor do we want you to be the loudest voice in the movement. We want your support, you know, and just know that, like, what that support looks like. I said, if I am trying to support, you know, the LGBT community, if I'm not in that community, I'm not going to be the face of the community, but I'm going to go to the community like, how can I help you guys?
Yeah.
So that, you know, that was kind of the understanding. And yeah, so that's what I see. I see a lot of you know, white faces in the space, you know, making these laws up that are going to affect Black people and have been affecting Black people. And the thought is like they don't have the same experiences or the empathy, you know, when it comes to you know, the legislation around this plan. Like, you know, when they're talking about the driving, I don't think a lot of them figure out like how deep that is, because, you know, I'm sure there's many of us who, you know, have felt prosecuted before being, you know, prosecuted or in the courtroom, you know, by the police officer because of the smell. And the thought is like, one of the things I want to be clear is, like I said to my friend, is even if the car smelled like marijuana, one, that doesn't mean that you were high when you were operating the vehicle, nor nor does that mean that you have weed on you.
Mhm.
But and I said, I could smoke in my car every night before I go to bed, and you know, get pulled over every morning and my car smells like weed. No, I'm not, you know, still high or feeling the effects, but yes, my car does smell like weed. I said, and obviously, you know, it wouldn't be great to have this, you know, smoke in your car, but the thought is like, hey, it might be 15 degrees out, like, you know, like, hey, it might have happened, right? And the thought is like, for them, they're just looking at it from like a prosecutorial standpoint and like a lawyer standpoint, like, you know, like, can we still prove a case? You know what I mean? And stuff like that. Like,
they have to make sure they meet their quota, right? And I hear one of the things is, you know, we love working our workforce angle here at Explore Maryland Cannabis, because, you know, we know that it's important for folks to be employed and help them stay employable in this ecosystem. And so one thing I hear from folks who work in the cultivation center is the smell of cannabis when you are working with cannabis does not get out of your clothes, does not get out of your hair. It is something that is genuinely on you, you know, day to day, especially if you're working in a facility, you know, day in and day out. So I'm always very much, you know, sensitive to the fact that people are always saying, well, the police can't pull you over for the scent. And I'm like, it doesn't even have to be the scent. It could be the impression, right? I don't have to have anything about cannabis in my car, but the police officer can make an inference because of what I may have on my seat, or what I may have, you know, as a sticker on the back of the car, or what they may see on the back seat, right, as they're walking up. So I think that, like you said, a lot of the ways in which we interact with people who use cannabis in a legal aspect needs to be really revisited, especially our decrim lib. There's no reason that medical patients have 44 ounces on a 30-day rolling basis, and that still is prosecutable, right? So I think that, you know, a lot really needs to change. Things got to catch up. Drug paraphernalia. I have friends who were getting, you know, thrown into jail, like drug court, for pipes. Like, it's
yes. And I had a conversation with Delegate Acevedo about this. You know, I won't hold you long on this issue, but I had a conversation with Delegate Acevedo about this, and he included paraphernalia in his bill 1342. I don't think, at least the way Jill's was written right now, it didn't have paraphernalia, and I don't think that. I'm not certain if the other ones included paraphernalia, like 837 Chair Clippinger's bill. Paraphernalia is important, but like I told Gabriel, the smell is more important to me, because for me, it would be the smell that they would initially, you know, been harassing me because of the smell, and then thereafter, if it's not the smell, then they're fishing to see if they can see something in plain sight that is deemed paraphernalia, right? So, you know, first was definitely the smell, and second, of course, was the paraphernalia. But yeah, paraphernalia shouldn't even be a thing in 2022. Right now, we have 38. I think it's 38 states that, you know, have now legalized or, you know, went for medical use, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes, exactly. So the thought is we're long due past ending prohibition.
Yes.
Well, Keisha, of course, I won't hold you long. I just wanted to ask you, of course, figure out what you have coming up. So tell me what you got coming up in the next couple of weeks. Give us a shout out. What do you have coming up?
Sure, yeah. So this month we are celebrating a whole bunch of things. One, we are celebrating Women's History Month. So I'll be spotlighting some of our women leaders, whether they work in the industry or they're looking to enter into the industry or they work in ancillary aspects. So we'll be pulling folks who have interviewed on the podcast. We've got some panels coming up. We've also got our first in-person meet and greets coming through. We're calling them Connections. Those will be starting in March, let me look at my calendar, March 16th and the 23rd on Wednesday nights. So if you can come on out, meet some folks. We'll be talking about building small businesses and getting prepared for adult use in this cannabis space. So if you want to learn more about that, you can go to our website, exploremarylandcannabis.com, check out our social channels, and of course, shoot us a DM and we'll get right back to you.
Yes, Keisha. So before you get out of here, I got to ask you 3 quick questions. Of course, I've been doing it. I'm trying to keep it rapid. So Pepsi or Coke?
Sprite.
Okay. Hey, different. I like it. Sprite, zesty, crisp. So consumption method of choice?
Always flour.
Hey, okay. Hey, I'm a flower guy too, so I had to give you a shout out.
That's always
yes, exactly, right. What was the last? Oh, Women's History Month. It is Women's History Month. Who is your icon? Who are you looking up to? And you can only choose one. Nobody else is gonna be upset.
Who, dead or alive?
I'd probably say dead. Just to hear, who you really looking up to.
So I lean very heavily on the people who have passed on, and recently I've been working in remembrance of my volleyball coach from high school. He passed away last June. But one thing I always remember her telling me is that, believing in myself first will push me a lot further than anything anyone else has to say to me. So while I know that, she's not here to see me trailblazing in this industry, I know that she's smiling down on me because I'm actually, following through on my word. So yes, dead for sure. Angelique Simpson Marcus, rest in peace. But alive, of course, is my mother, right? My mother, I come from a line of strong Black women, and my mother is the head of them all. Stubborn is all get out. Virgo, of course, but to be raised by Virgo is to be loved by Virgo, and I've been loved very hard throughout my life. So making them both proud as I do this thing in the cannabis space is something I truly love, for sure.
Absolutely. And I will say that I appreciate, of course, meeting you, and as I mentioned earlier, there's not many people of color in the space, so we continue to advocate and to bring people in, and one of the things is to continue to support each other, because that is very important. And in the Black community, we should always put forth the effort to continue to support another and to pay it forward, because that's really how we're going to collectively win, right? So.
Absolutely. Let me show you how much I support you. I know you gotta go, but every time somebody comes to our house, I have this up.
Respect. Hey, I appreciate that.
Martin, you are so inspirational, right? To be young, to be gifted, to be Black in this space, like, that we all got your back. And I think that, I'm looking forward to the amazing things that you will do, the amazing things that I will support you in. And I just cannot wait to see what is next.
No, I mean, you're too kind. I don't like talking about myself. It's one of the things I don't like doing. I'll give somebody else props before I give myself props. But, I appreciate the kind words, and just know that I always appreciate the support. You were there for me during the campaign, and we're still going to be connected. And, for the ecosystem, right? For the ecosystem, as we always say. And of course, I think I'll see you soon. I'm not sure if I'll see you at the Canna Jam, because I'll be speaking at Canna Jam. But I think you said you might be able to drop by. I don't remember, but if I do,
I will definitely make time. I've got some awards, my final Explore Maryland Cannabis Awards. I need to drop off to some of our winners so that I can get ready for next season. So,
got you. Well, I appreciate you, and of course, hopefully, we're celebrating at the end of the legislative session, April 12th. Hopefully, we're celebrating that legalization and many other things have passed, around cannabis reform, cannabis justice. So yes, free the tree. And of course, I'll keep you plugged in We hope to have Gary back, sometime. So I'll definitely keep you plugged in.
Oh, I can't wait. Yes, that would be amazing.
Yes. Okay. When no problem. I will see you soon. Thanks for joining us again.
Peace.
Yes. Peace and love. Okay. So that was